is the ID Masterclass. I just thought I'd throw up an agenda for Richard's benefit. Hold on, Richard, it's coming. So this is what we've got today. So a few things to work through. I'll just show you the calendar that we've got coming up, you know, so you can see the rhythm of things. I want to talk about that a little bit. We'll do a PPI check-in. This time we might do it a little bit differently. I think in the masterclass, it'd be good to actually just do a pulse and see where people are at. And then we'll talk the ID certification. Ian, if you could just share the dates of that when we get there. I want to talk about the Christmas gift, unpack anything that is on people's minds from Treven's discussion and interview last week, and then anything else on people's minds. This is the class where we get into solving them. So we'll scoot through most of these topics pretty quickly. So there's plenty of time left for us to talk about whatever's on your mind. So if you have a particular issue about yourself, about your ID, about someone close to you, especially those of you who have just done some IDs on the people that are closest to you and you'd like to talk about that, then we've got room to do that. So just maybe give that some thought while we work through the first couple of items. Just before I do kick on with this program, is there anything else on people's minds that they would like to put on the table today?
Hey, Paul, this is Detlef talking from Germany. Just a question. I've just a new hire from at Infoblox since last Monday, and I've got this invitation. I'm not sure, is it something that I step in? Is it the right session for me? I'm a channel manager in sales.
Yes. Have you done your ID yet, Detlef?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, then you probably won't get as much from it, but you're welcome to sit through it. You'll get more if you have done your ID. And part of your employment at Infoblox is that everyone does get the chance to do their Instinctive Drives profile and learn more about what drives and motivates them, what their natural strengths and vulnerabilities are, and how to operate at your best. That's a common practice at Infoblox. So you will get invited to do that in the coming days. But you're welcome to see how this forum runs, because this is something that you'll see some of your colleagues on this call, other Infoblox employees. And this is something we do every week to help you and others around the world understand more about your ID so that you can always stay finely tuned with being in stride and at your best.
Okay, thank you very much. Understood. I try to follow.
Okay. Ian, are we recording?
I'm on mute, but yes, we are.
Good.
And to the cloud this time.
Okay, good. All right, guys. So in terms of the calendar for, you see, last week we did the interview with Treva Martinez, which had a lot of great feedback on. Thank you for being there, those that were, and for the contribution and feedback. Today is the masterclass, and then we have a rhythm of public webinar masterclass, public rhythm masterclass, public seminar masterclass. But we sprinkle in once a month a live interview that I call a game changer, part of the Game Changer series, where I try and find people who've been game changing by what they've done and from a place of real authenticity. And I'm really delighted to let you know that the person, I've got to lock in the date. There's just something, I owe this person a conversation first, but they've agreed to do it. So we're either going to do this at the end of February, on February 24 and 25, or the one in March. But for those of you, particularly in Australia, and those of you who are from overseas, you will relate to this story regardless. But a year ago, last Monday, there was a young family, 6 children, and they were out having a walk to get an ice cream on a Sunday afternoon. And a drunk and drug driver ran down 3 of them and killed 3 from the same family. And the parents, their names are Danny and Layla Abdallah, have been incredible with how they've dealt with that horrific tragedy. And I've spoken to Danny about his story, not about the tragedy, because that's been covered in a number of television documentaries, which I've actually got the link on the bottom of the screen there, and I can send these to you in the chat later. But I would recommend, for those of you who are interested, hearing not so much about the tragedy, but about how does someone deal with that type of adversity and the power of perspective and being authentic with how you deal with it. It's an incredible story. I've already interviewed Danny for parts of it, and his approach is profound. And I believe, Layla will just add to that. So it's a really incredible, it's probably one of the most powerful interviews I'll ever do, you know, and I'd really commend it to you. But as preparation for that, it's a few weeks away. There are 2 links at the bottom here. The promo is just a 1.5 minute promo that was for a documentary done by one of our major TV stations here. But the documentary on YouTube is called In the Blink of an Eye. And you might want to take a look at that because it'll give you a very good, you know, precursor to what this family had to deal with, and it will make what we cover in that interview even more significant. And then in March, I have an executive lined up on the 24th and 25th, but they can flex if I need to flex for February. And that'll be a US person who's doing an incredible job transforming an organization. And once I lock in the date for Danny and Layla, I'll then give you the details of this one. But the dates are the 24th and 25th of March. And then obviously the next one will be April 21, 22. So I'm getting a lot of really good feedback about the Game Changer interview. So I wanted to publish the dates so that if you couldn't make any of the other series, you got to at least make sure that you attend and at least register, because if you register for the webinars, we send you the recording afterwards. All right. So with that, the next thing is our PPI, and that's to just do a quick pulse on where everybody's at. So what you might do is in the chat, if I can find the chat, where's my chat? Here we go. You might just put down what's your score on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being you're really in stride and at your best, and you feel very, you know, much, as people would say, in flow, you know, everything's just happening for you and you're very fulfilled. And if you're a 1 or 2 or 3 out of 10, it means you're very out of stride. And I'd be very interested to just have you quickly put up, what's the number for you? So Mike's saying there he's an 8, but what's the number that you just feel resonates with you today? There's some good scores there. Good on you, John. 10, 9, 8. 8 from you too, Ian and Richard. That's excellent. Amanda, they're good scores. Joe, that's great, Joe. Vanessa, 6. Good on you, Judy. We put you in as a 10 then. So guys, these are great scores, because what this means is that on my experience, and I do this every day with people and have done for years, the people who lead best, and by leading, I don't mean you need to be in place of a team. I mean, we're all out there, you know, every day casting a shadow and influencing other people. Even if we just go to the corner store, there's an impact we have on people. And when you show up as an 8, 9, or 10, without you even trying, just because of the energy you exude, you lighten and light up other people's lives. And we all say we want to make a difference. And instead of us looking for roles where we can find our purpose and passion, if we just even focus on how we show up and make sure we're at this really great score each and every day, it's just fantastic. So, you know, Vanessa, you said you're a 6. There might be something pulling you out of stride. Please feel free to share if you want to share, and anyone else too, for that matter. If there's something that's happening that's making you particularly, you know, have a good score today, please feel free to share that. But Vanessa, did you want to share anything about your score?
Yeah, you know, I think it's just one of those days. I had a great weekend, and today I'm feeling a little more worn down. I think it's more physical. I'm, you know, not really sick, but allergies. And then on the work front, lots going on, very busy. And then on the home front, also being pulled in so many directions. And so like between the combination, I just like would rather like get back in bed and go back to sleep for the day. but I know it's temporary. And that's what I kind of tell myself is it's temporary. Push through where I can push through, and you know, get ready for the next thing.
Do you know how to get back in stride with all of those things on your plate? Do you know how to get back there like within the next 10, 15 minutes?
Good question. I need to think about that a little bit more, but I think it's probably finding something that's energizing for me where I can, you know, get started on something and find something I'm really, you know, enjoy doing rather than all the 50 emails that I haven't read yet today. So maybe I'll throw something else at you in case this helps. It is your nature, when you are such a strong avoid complete person, it is your nature to react to things. And so
you can, have people coming at you in situations where you start reacting because that's your drive, but you also have a drive to feel on top and in control. That's that 7 in verify. And what gets you there is making a list and feeling like the things that you're working on are at the top of that list. And if they're not, shifting it so you get to the most important thing. And you can do that really quickly. So even though there's a lot on your plate, do you have a list that there you go.
Oh, actually, I don't. And that's actually a great idea. I sometimes feel like I'm not a list person, but when I can check things off a list, it does feel.
It's not the checking off. It's not the checking off, because the checking off is more of a completer's trait. It's the making of the list. All you need to do is see the list so that you then feel more organized. You feel not as overwhelmed. You feel up on top and in control, and then get started on the number one thing. And then you'll probably forget the rest of the list, but that's not the important bit. The point is that you got to a place where you felt back in control. And that's what, if you did that honestly within the next few minutes, just the fact that you feel back in control will probably change your number. So I just share that with you as an example of how knowing your ID and knowing some of the strategies you can use, you can get to that place very quickly and not let these other, distractions cause you to react type thing. You know what I mean?
I think that's the best plan for me. I appreciate it, Paul.
You're very welcome. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to share about their score?
Actually, Paul, I'll add a bit. The last month or so, I've been wrestling with a few things with Anne. I can confide in you all because you're all on the wavelength. She had a bit of an operation with a bit of a lesion on the colon, and it needs a bit of chemo just to finish things off. So the last month has been pretty hectic, as you can imagine. I mean, especially for Anne. Anyway, so the wash up is really, it's come to a fruition now where we all know where we're going. We know the program. We even know which bloody rooms to go to have chemo and check in and check out. It's like a bloody circus, Yeah. But anyway, we've got the circus under control now, which is why I'm in there as an 8. If you asked me about 2 weeks ago, I would have been a little bit more circumspect. But Anne's also got the whole picture in front of her as a 6, 5, 7, 3. So she has got the whole picture of where she's headed, Yeah. And so the whole thing is settled down. And again, it's happened so much over the last 20 years, thanks to ID, because you can see the pressure points developing from both sides. I'm looking after Anne's under the whip, and you can cater for what she actually needs. And it's really quite revolutionary. I mean, I'm a ID disciple, as you know, but when you see it in action in a personal confrontation on a thing like chemo, etc., it really proves itself.
Well, exactly. And a lot of people would typically, outside of this group, most people would probably get a lot of, empathy and compassion to sort of say, oh, you poor thing, got every reason to expect that your number would be down, but I'm sort of a bit relentless with that. And having been through that myself with, very sick kids and relationships and business challenges, no matter what the challenge is, there's still a decision, like a choice. And in fact, Denny Abdallah is probably the ultimate example of this, and Layla. No matter what happens, and no matter how painful it is, there's still a choice you have as to how you deal with it, and the ID is just gives you that compass to know where do I need to reset to stay really in stride. So good on you, Doug. It's great to see you, no matter that you're going through a tough challenge, you're still not only staying in stride yourself, but being there to support Anne. And please pass on our love and best wishes to Anne as well.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Thanks, man.
All right, let's keep moving, team. So the next one was to just unpack from, the interview with Treven last week. If anyone had any questions, I put some of these in the discussion actually, because there was a number of questions that were sort of getting dealt with in the chat, but I don't know whether anyone had some sort of residual questions and thoughts they wanted to share around. Treven was really making the point around, you know, being such a strong improviser, but needs the support of the avoid improvisers. And the number of questions that were being raised around, you know, how do you really work together when you are one such a strong improviser like a 9 and others are avoid improvisers. And I didn't know whether there might still be some residual discussion to be had around that, or anything else from discussion, whether anyone else has taken, you know, some insights and used them, or just whatever might have transpired. I just want to provide room to have a quick debrief on last week's interview. Nothing? Let's keep moving. So these were, these are some of the questions. I've got 2 pages of questions that have come up from others, you know, as you register for the meeting, or some things that can lay over in the chats. These ones here from Leanna, Susan and Donzel were the ones I was just referring to around the improvise, avoid, improvise. And then Matthew put this question on this week's registration. I'm not sure if Matt's on the call. You there at all, Matt?
He is.
Yes, I am. Thanks, Paul.
Oh, okay. So we can cover that for you. Just before we start, I just thought, so we have some idea of how to manage the time. Are there other topics or questions that people have on their minds that they would like to address today?
I want to throw something out, Paul. There's a few people on this call that I've had chats with over the time, and they know who they are. And they've had some real great insights. And I was wondering if it might be appropriate at some point in time today that some of them, whom I will not name, share them, because we thought they were pretty hot, and I thought the group could use them, but it's not for me to say it, okay? So you know who I'm talking to, and I'll be quiet now.
Okay. Well, let's provide that space a little later if anyone wants to get into that. And thanks for spending the time helping people. I love that about this community. Okay, anyone else? So Matt, why don't we start with you then? Let's talk about your question. Do you want to maybe just present it in your words to the group?
Yeah, I'm sort of fairly new to this. Well, not new, but I don't follow it as close as I should, the ID thing, but I love it. But I just keep finding these conflicting trays that I have, or traits, I think you guys say. So this one just stood out to me when I saw your question. The fact that I really do love systems. I love standard, quality control and SOPs and all that. I just really love that. But as a person, I sort of operate differently. Just as I say there, I do make quick decisions. I don't need I just need a bit of an idea of the options, and then I can make a quick decision and run with that. And I hate to be restricted in that area in one sense. So yeah, how do the two things work together?
It's a great question, and thanks for joining us all the way from New Zealand. It's nice to hear your voice. This actually is getting to the heart of what drove me to develop the ID, because when you look at the behaviors, the behaviors and even the words you use can make it sound like you're a very systematized person in terms of being like a completer, and yet you do your ID and you come up as an avoid completer 3746, and it'd be very easy for some people to say, well, why are you doing them then? You know, you're not a systematized, routine, organized type of person. How does that come about? Before I answer or say anything further, I just want to invite people on the call who might be somewhat similar to you, who might relate to this, to share what that perspective is for them. Like, is this the same question for you, or have you figured it out for yourselves and you can see where you're doing it from your ID? Is there someone who's got a similar style of ID to Matt that could relate to that and go, yeah, I'm the same, but here's where I'm coming from, to give that clarity to Matt?
Paul, if I could just say a couple of things. I'm probably a bit more extreme than Matthew, but I think the thing for me I've worked out is I like systems at times, but I like it when it's going to help me make an impact. So that comes to my use improvise and wanting to make sure that I've got things sorted so that when I am interacting with people or delivering something for them, that it's well thought out and at times anyway, and they can feel impressed by it.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe. That's true. Anyone else? Well, this is the masterclass. So and the whole point of this is we get into some of the nuances. So in the same way that an avoid improvise person is risk averse, but often makes decisions and takes risks to avoid a bigger risk, you know, if that makes sense, you know, so you still look like you're taking a risk, but when you get in and do the what we call level 4 questioning with someone and you say, but what was really behind that? What was your real driver? So as an example, I had a lady who was an avoid improviser who, when we talked about her ID in a group, her friend said, this isn't right because Anne is a real risk taker. And she stood up in the class and she'd done parachuting and hang gliding and all this sort of stuff. And she said, no, my ID is right. What you people don't know, like what the deeper drive is that the bigger risk for me, the real risk I'm avoiding is getting another 20 years into my life and feeling like I've lived a boring life. And I'm not going to do that. And the truth is I'm petrified when I'm parachuting and I'm petrified when I'm hang gliding, and I do everything I can to take the risk out of it. But it's all because I felt like I was living a boring life and I don't want the next 20 years to be like that. So you've got to get down to the deeper level meaning. And what the same thing that can happen for you, Matt, is that you actually hate doing things that are routine, hate doing things that are, you know, monotonous. And so systems are a way, like you can put time into building a system because the system can remove a lot of the monotony for you because it does it itself. You know, similarly, you hate having to justify things and go back over them and refine them. So you can then have, you know, systems and procedures and routines so that you get everything done the first time and don't have to think, because your ID doesn't want to have to think and analyze and go over it. It just wants it to happen really cleanly. And so it could be something like that as well, where the behavior looks like you're doing something that's different to your ID. But if you think, where's my drive really coming from? It might be more like what I just said, which is very much in line with your ID. And it could be like Joe said, you know, where you think, well, it's not on everything, it's just on some things, and it's where I'm going to be more useful as an authenticator or have more impact and so on, you know. How does that land for you, Matt?
Yeah, that's helpful. Both what you've just said and what Joe said, I can relate to. So what you've said, yeah, I often find myself wondering, why can't everyone just do stuff the same as me? And so once you get it down on paper what the procedure is or the way we do this, or make a little video of how to do it, you can hand it on and then job done. Well, I just assume then that everyone can just follow suit. I did like what Joe said, that working on a project or working for a customer to come up with a solution, I do like to provide something that impresses them. So often that is something in the quality control area. So yeah, I didn't think of that, but
yeah,
that really does relate. Yeah.
Yeah, and the cool thing about this is that people can't then use their ID as an excuse, because you can't turn around and say, oh, well, don't give it to me because I'm not a whatever, you know, I'm not a risk taker, I'm not a verifier, I'm not a completer, whatever it might be. You can say, no, you just need to find the motivation from your ID to do that same task. That's what got me into this, because I saw people doing the same task from very different approaches. I'm like, so where's that coming from? And it was, you have to get beneath behavior, you have to get beneath the personality and the words they use to the underlying motivation. And that's the unique, you know, principle of ID.
Hey, thanks. That's been helpful.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for raising it. It's not just helpful to you guys when you raise a question for yourselves, it helps the whole group learn. So I really appreciate you, you know, being vulnerable and open and sharing these things.
Just one thing you said that I can't let go, Matthew. He said, I figured it out. It works. It's simple. It's good. And that's when we use systems. When it's smooth, it's easy, it's done. Why doesn't everyone else just do it? And I had to laugh. I said, we all asked that question. We've sorted it. We've got it. And I'm just wondering how you deal with that, because a lot of times on these calls, what we remind people of is solving the problem, getting the process, all that. That's only half the job. Now your work begins, because now you have to find out what do they need to buy it, not how good it is and keep selling it and talking about how wonderful it is for you. But now the thing is, okay, what do they need to buy in with it? And that's a whole new ball game. And your 3 down there doesn't want to have to explain it, doesn't want to have it. 7 goes, oh my God, I've worked it out, shut up, leave me alone, right? And I think that's the big shift when you move to what do they need. You move from managing situations to leading people. And I'm just wondering, have you noticed that that's the new challenge? It's like not solving the problem, but enrolling them.
Yeah, that's you're reading my life, Greg. I used to say, well, luckily, by the time that's a problem, I've moved on to the next thing anyway. So don't worry. But I do find that is one of my challenges with working with a team is to think about them and what they need to buy in. And since I've started following this program and understanding the team members' IDs, it's been really helpful to realize that some people need more time. They need to digest the information. They need to see proof of things working, and just understanding that and not just jumping to that conclusion that, hey, everyone thinks the same as I do, and they're all following behind me, and I haven't even looked back to check. So it's been really helpful, and I find that I can give them the time and give them the information and not rush them and provide the evidence, and just by being conscious of it.
Can I just add one more brief thing to that, Matthew, that I don't know whether you found this too, but with my Use Authenticate drive, I find that because I can be very black and white, I've also had to learn to remember that not everybody else is as black and white as I am, and that if they're talking and I'm asking a question, I often need to dig deeper sometimes to actually find out what they really mean, especially if they're avoid authenticate. Because otherwise, if I assume that what they say is what they mean, then I can really get into a lot of trouble. So it's really helped me to keep asking more questions, to keep clarifying, so that I can get to the nub of the problem.
Can I just add something as well? Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. So just one thing, Matt, what you were saying there, one girl that works with us, she has a similar ID, and when we did the webinar with Ian, she said she had a question saying that she disagrees because she thinks she provides a lot of detail on her emails to clients, and she said, well, my ID tells me that I don't need detail, but I do provide detail. And one of the things Ian explained was that she can be very detailed, but not because she needs the detail, but because she wants to cause a first good impression, and she doesn't want people to question her. So she'll prepare an amazing email with all the details for the clients to kind of go, all right, this is what it is. Don't come back to me asking anything. It's all in here and it's perfect. So don't question, which is different to someone with my ID that would provide the detail because I like the detail and I want to understand the detail. So that could be one of the reasons, you love systems and all of that. It's because it helps you, but from a different perspective. It allows you to be more of how you are in terms of improviser and avoid verifier. So yeah, just a thought.
Awesome. You guys have got a good handle on this. This is fantastic. All right. There are also a bunch of 7 people. I'm not sure if everyone's on this call, but from the gift I offered at Christmas of having you do 5 IDs of your family and friends, there were 7 people that had all 5 IDs used in your inner circle. And there were obviously a few others who got, 2 and 3. And not all of that is in our control, in as much as, you know, just because you invite people doesn't mean they're going to respond. You can't always force people to do it. But I thought a couple of things worth sharing, and I didn't know whether some of you might have some, you know, stories or insights or questions from what you've found with those 5 people. But I thought it was really interesting. We said, here's the gift. You've got a month to use it. The people who used, there were 3 people that used it. They were all completers. And then last time I said, you know what? I can see what's happening. I'll give 1 more week's extension. And when it was a short term, there were 4 more people. They were all improvisers. They all just like crammed it into the, you know, to the deadline. But I wanted to ask you, or provide the room, if there's anything from you guys who have done IDs with people around you, whether there's been anything come out of that, you know, things you want to share with the group that could be really great insights or questions that have come from it, anything from your experience that you thought might be helpful. And even if you only had 2 or 3 people do their IDs, I just thought it might be worth giving you some room to talk about that if there's been something, you know, either on your mind or worth sharing.
Yeah, if I could share, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, Dylan.
Yep. So first off, thank you for that gift. That was a wonderful gift. I got my all of my family to take that.
Excellent.
So which was, I already had my idea, obviously, my 2 daughters and my wife. And it was, it really opened up everybody's eyes, right? In terms of it, for my daughter, it kind of made her understand or reinforced kind of her notion of herself, right? So, and she felt comforted. Okay, this is how I'm built. This is how my drives work, and this is who I am. And she started beginning to accept who she was, right? Instead of trying to fight it. Yeah, so that was wonderful. I mean, it kind of completely nailed everybody's characteristic for the most part. So it kind of blew everybody's mind. And then we kind of went through at home, sharing each other's ID and what it means, and how others should collaborate with them. And that was like even more useful. I mean, if I could say that, because it helped us kind of understand where the other person was coming from.
Yeah.
And so that now we can be more mindful of how we kind of interact with that person, right? So it was, yeah, both in terms of shining a light on themselves and reinforcing who they are, and then shining a little bit of light on why the sibling was that way, or my wife is thinks in a certain way, was very, very valuable. So thank you so much for that.
You're very welcome. I'm really pleased it's had that impact for you, and especially on your daughter. You know, when kids can get this type of self-awareness, and to your point, people talk about self-awareness, you know, as a really important trait, but I personally think that one of the most valuable things you can have is self-acceptance. So once you get the awareness, you've actually got to then come to a place of going, yep, that's me, and I'm good with that. You know, I'm not going to try and change who I am. And not there's a lot of people that, in those of us who, you know, coach with ID, have people who do their ID and say, oh yeah, but I wish I was a bit more of this or a bit less of that. And, you know, they look at others because they admire them and they want to be a bit more like somebody else. So it's actually, it's not an automatic step that people own their ID. So the fact that you're helping your daughter and others get to a place of acceptance, Dilip, and then they can start to have confidence in that and start to shine. It's so powerful to have that, you know, capability at such a young age. Well done.
Just one quick question, Paul. So Ian is kind of helping with this, but the question is, one of my daughters, they couldn't get a number, right? She took it a couple of times and she couldn't get a number. And Ian was kind enough to respond and said that, okay, you guys need to set up a time to talk to one of us, which we haven't gotten around to it. But why would that be that the system wouldn't be able to generate a number for some people?
Yeah, that's a great question. It happens, you know, for a bunch of people. It's not unique just to your person, but about we're working on this process now, but I'll just say around 18 to 20% of the time, there are people who, you know, the questionnaire is saying to them, what's your natural way of doing things? And you're responding based on your knowledge of yourself. But there are people who are pulled in so many different directions that they lose sight of who they are and what their natural way is. And they know they're not at their best. They know they're not on their game, as they would say. Some people even say, I'm not even myself right now. This isn't, you know, I'm normally happier than this, or more driven than this, or more energized than this. They know they're not at their best, but they don't quite know why. And they're trying to figure that out. And we call the result a searching result, Dilip. So for whoever was involved doing it, what it means is that they might be living life and doing things and keeping everyone else happy, but inside themselves, they're not as in stride with being true to themselves as they could be. And they don't necessarily know that. They just, you know, caught up on that treadmill, as it were. And so the ID shows that they're not in stride. And then we have a process. Some of it's online, some of it we can, you know, intervene and talk to them about to help them get back in stride and find what's missing for them to get, you know, in stride and be back true to their ID. So Ian's probably helping you with that process now.
That's right. And I was wondering if age has got to do plays a role, because she's only 14 years old. She's the youngest of us. Is
Yes.
that a factor?
Yes, it can be. We that's why we say it's best that people only try the ID once they're in high school, and only if they've got good self-awareness. Like if they have enough life experience, have a good sense of, well, what is my way of doing things? You know, now some people can be in their 20s and not have that knowledge, and that's why they would come up that way. Some people, I've had people as young as 7 do their ID, and they're crystal clear on what their way is, and they're very smart, so they understand the questions, you know. But we, as a rule of thumb, say high school, because at that point people are old enough to understand the questions and had enough of life experience to understand, have hopefully a sense of what their natural way is. But it's a bit dicey, you know. It could be another few years before she's really there. So yeah, I wouldn't draw too much from it, other than the fact that you're open to the fact she has a way and you start listening for that. And Greg made the comment before, just asking her what she needs to be at her best. You'll probably start to hear some, you know, some guidance from her that will help you influence and guide her even better.
Got it. Thank you.
Paul, I'd like to make a comment to the gentleman that just spoke. One of my people was in this category of searching, and we had a conversation with Ian, and she is 77 years old. And after the conversation, she now is much more in sync with her ID. And as far as we could go, and it's been so helpful to her. So that's an example of my experience with that type of thing.
Beautiful. Thanks, Judy. Yeah, I mean, for us, it's one of the most fulfilling things we do. You know, I mean, we're all about helping people live in stride and be at their best. And it's sort of a gift for us when people come up searching, because they're people who are like a sitting duck for that type of assistance, you know. So yeah, don't be put off by it. See it as a real opportunity to make a difference. And because as Judy's explaining, you know, when people get to have some discussion about and realize this, it's incredibly powerful. It's like someone described it to me once as, it's like when you're searching, you're in the middle of a field in a fog and you want to get out of the field, but you don't know where to turn to. You don't know where the gate is. And even if all we did was just say, it's over there, you know, and we just point them to it, once they got some direction, they'll figure the rest out themselves. You don't need to solve all their life's problems. They're just sufficiently confused or unsure right now that they don't know whether to go left, right, north, or south. You know, they just need a little bit of guidance, and then away they go. And it's so liberating when they start to get that perspective back.
Paul, I had similar experience. I actually paid for my family to take the survey or the test early on. Two out of 4 had to go through the same experience, and And the way I thought about it is because I know them very well. One is my wife, the other one is my youngest daughter. Is they are so brilliant, so smart, so intuitive that they try to game everything they do. So they cannot just relax and not look 3 levels deep of every question. And so I tried to talk to them. I'm like, there's nothing to game here. There's nothing to win. Just do the damn test. Just answer the question as honest as possible. That's been my
and it can be that. There are times when people are sort of trying to look for something more. I will tell you, for John and others, sometimes it's not for months later that someone will go, oh, you know what? Now I can see it. Now I can see how constrained I was, or how blocked I was somehow. It's not always automatic for people to have that insight. It takes, for some people, a lot of self-reflection to realize how far off track they may have been, and they may not be that off track much at all, person to person, but it's it's a very valuable experience. Thanks, John. John, I have to ask you, you're a 10 today. What's behind being a 10 for you?
I've been on fire for, I don't know, 3 or 4 months. Everything I touch seems to work, so I'm touching everything. So things are coming out of the woodworks, and I'm able to deal with them. People come to me because I'm able to deal with everything, and so it's just fun. I'm just having a great time.
Good on you. Good on you. I'm not surprised you say it's been some time, because your ID doesn't sort of bounce from day to day. It does get up on a roll, and it's really great to hear that it's something that's been coming along for you, and now you're sort of sitting in a place where you're really enjoying that. So
I did have a crash yesterday, about I don't know, about 4 actually. All of a sudden, I just like, I need to do something. I had a nap for an hour. I got up and worked till 3 in the morning.
Wow.
And that was wonderful. It's like having another day again. And I woke up, and immediately after I woke up, I solved 2 of my problems. I mean, they just came to me in an instant, and I couldn't wait to get to my email to share it. So it was, and it's fun. I just love it. I mean, when I'm there, I want to stay there.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and Greg just pointed out in the chat, that it's not necessarily a crash. I mean, we all have human needs as well. We need food, we need rest, we need exercise. And if you're not getting some of those things, and sometimes you're not getting them because you are on such a roll doing the other things, like going till 3 o'clock in the morning. And so at some point, it's keeping that balance with everything in order to ensure the longevity of that 10, but thanks for sharing. It's good to see you in such a great place. All right. Greg invited people that he's been working with to share maybe some of the insights that have come from your discussions. Greg, what? No, am I You're on mute.
It's just that now they're daubing themselves. I was going to leave. I was going to let them be spontaneous, but that's okay. Now we know who it is.
Okay. No problem.
It's okay. Look, it was just that I had such a great time, and one of them probably going to speak now. Okay, leave it.
Okay, good. So there is another topic that has come up before before we get there, because I don't want to run out of time. Ian, can you just remind people about the ID certification program? Because we've had a number of people enrolling for this, but I know it might be either off the radar or others might have missed it. And just maybe explain it, Ian, and give them the dates, please.
Yep. So the ID certification program, basically, it's a real deep dive into the ID. So we're qualifying you to basically be ID certified, so you can go out and use it in your coaching practice, in your business, however you need to use it. But it's basically you be certified in the instinctive drive. So and it's going to be run virtually, as is everything these days, over 3 days. So these are the US dates. So they're Wednesday the 3rd of March, Thursday the 4th of March, and Thursday the 11th of March. So they're the US dates, and it'll be starting, I believe, 10 a.m. on each of those days. So for those of us in Australia, so that's in the US, West Coast. For those of us, obviously in Australia and New Zealand, and anywhere in Asia Pac, where we will be obviously the day after. So it'll be Thursday the 4th, Friday the 5th, and Friday the 12th. It is an early start for us, 5 a.m. for the Sydney siders, a little bit later for the New Zealanders. So if anyone in New Zealand, you'd obviously be a couple of hours later. But it's I think we've already got a few of the Australians have enrolled. They're going to be up early and ready to go, and obviously a few from the US as well. But please reach out to me if you need more details. I know some of you have, and I've sent the details out. But we would really love to have you on the program. It is particularly those of you who are regular here. I think it would be well worthwhile. You get a lot out of it, and it'll be facilitated by Tracy. I think a lot of you have seen, and Alona, two of our black belt ID consultants, and they're just amazing. So you're just going to learn so much.
Thanks, Ian. So a couple of things I would just quickly add. It's virtual. It's not online. So it's not like it's a course you sign up for. It will actually be a live, learning like this that you can participate in. And, it's as much the content as the group who are on the program. Everyone adds a lot of value. It's very interactive. And it's not just for people who want to go out and be, using ID coaching with clients. We have people who just want to learn more about this for themselves and their family and community. And they see, a lot of power and value in understanding their own ID, and then in understanding the IDs of people around them to help them live better lives. So, please don't feel excluded if you just want to use it at a personal level. We have people already signed up who are doing the course for exactly that reason. Some of my kids are even signed up to do it. Sam came to me and said, Dad, it was almost like a complaint. All the other kids got to do ID mastery and I never got to do like the deep dive on ID. So I know he signed up. I'm not sure about the others, but I think, I know Susie signed up for it. So there's, people doing it at a personal level as well as for those who want to go out and actually practice with it. And if you've already done ID mastery before, don't think that you won't get something out of coming and doing this again. I remember a friend of ours, a lot of us know a lady called Jill Horder. I think she's done something like 6 ID mastery programs. And she said, Paul, every time I come, it just takes me to a new level because she's in a different place. The people on the course are different. So there's different discussion. And there's always nuances that you learn, that you like being on these calls every week. There's always something new. And you've only got to get one piece that tweaks it 1%, but 1% can take you from silver to gold and really change your life, So it's a great program. And then we've got another one in development now called the ID Leader Program. I think we're going to call it being like game changer leadership. And that's for more around how a different angle of how you actually use it within organizations. And again, we'll have life applications as well. But anyway, so early March, there's that program coming up. Give it some thought. If you'd like to do it, you're very welcome. And I think we're going to move into like a quarterly rhythm with those programs. So if you can't make those dates, it will be coming up again a few months later. All righty, thanks, Ian. So guys, one of the topics that's come up is mental health. And people have asked questions. I'll call the slide up here and then I might ditch the slides because I just want to open up for discussion. But there have been questions that you've asked around mental health in the past. So I've just put up some of the questions that you might have either directly asked or they might have been in the chat. And I just put them up, not so much to go through these specifically, but just to provoke some thinking, because I know mental health is such a topic today. When a company like Cisco did a pulse of their employee base, and we're talking 70,000 people, they found that 1 in 4 of their employees, 1 in 4 was directly connected to mental illness, meaning either they had an issue or someone in their direct family, their spouse or their children, had a mental illness issue. That's an incredible statistic. And it was a massive, wake up call as to, well, what can we do to help our employee base? And now that people are working from home and challenged with COVID and trying to raise kids while they're working from home and all sorts of new dynamics, it is putting a lot of pressure on, and everyone's got different coping mechanisms. So what can even be exciting and challenging and fun to someone working from home, juggling all those balls, for someone else could be putting unprecedented levels of stress on them, and everyone deals differently. So I just thought I'd open up the opportunity, and this might be a continuous discussion that we need to have as well. If anyone's got any particular angle they'd like to explore from a connection with ID and mental health, anxiety, any form of stress, illness, etc.
Hey, Paul, it's Grant. How you going?
Great, Grant. Thanks for joining.
Sorry for being late too. A bit of a last minute
No
call
problem.
as I went to jump on. Look, one thing I wanted to just provide some feedback on, and my own personal experience when it comes to mental illness was many weeks ago. Was in one of these calls, and I tend to wear my heart on my sleeve, and pretty obvious if I'm not in stride. And Greg reached out to me and just wanted to check in as a good buddy, and we got straight to the point and realised that I was out of stride. And so when I started to unpack it with Greg around some of the things that I was going through and continue to go through to this day, what I was finding was I was getting stuck in what I was calling flat days, and so we worked through utilising the strength of my drives to sort of unpack that and then come up with what I ended up calling my blueprint, on how to stay true north. And it was doing things like deliberately practicing the habit of catching those moments when they arise. The first thing was, don't call it flat days, call it flat moments. Don't blow it out of proportion and give yourself some credit, but they're moments and not days. The other thing is, being a 70 verifier, I can be pretty tough on myself. So if I feel like I'm not delivering on something or not meeting my life's purpose or letting my family down, I'm the biggest critic of myself. And so it was putting some habits in place around recognizing that. But it was then starting to get some practical solutions to it. So if I play to my drive and I've got an issue, like, can I fix it right now? And what's the purpose? What's the problem to solve? And starting to play to my strengths as a verifier. I was just trying to think what else I had there. And the other thing was, and this was a really important point that Greg made to me, and I know he's made it on this call before, is when the flat feeling of fear or despair arises, remember the feeling is real, but the conclusions and thoughts that I come up with are not real. So acknowledge the feelings, but recognize the meaning or the significance I put around them aren't real. They're the story that I create for those feelings. So that was some real epiphany or some real light bulb moments for me. And so the thing we came up with was catch the moments and then start to sort of work through redirecting, my feelings, etc. The thing that I realized, I guess a number of weeks after we put together this blueprint, was it actually took more than that. So there were times where I'd catch the feeling and I still felt like I wasn't on top of things. I wasn't in stride or in control. And I realized that to actually take that step, I physically had to take the step. I had to get up and get active. And, it was getting outside, getting fresh air, going for a walk, jumping on the trampoline with the kids, whatever it might be. I really had to get physical and do something physical to get out of that flat moment. The last piece that Greg really emphasized within it, and it's something that resonates with me, is it's this notion of getting into service and being a role model for people. So don't just keep that gold nugget to yourself. Like, share it with your family, share it with your work colleagues as much as possible. Because that in itself, teaches you and reinforces with you the learnings you get out of, extending yourself. So that whole blueprint for me has been, it's been a masterpiece really. And it really came from these sessions and Greg, being a good mate that he is, picking up that, I wasn't in stride. So that's my example. And it is truly mental health, because I was struggling with it and didn't know what the practical solutions were.
And Grant, thank you for sharing, first of all. And Greg, thanks for the help and the support. What you say mental health, what were you experiencing that made you feel like it was a mental health issue?
Was almost the feeling of helplessness. Now, I know it wasn't quite as drastic as that, but just sort of feeling like, this is not supposed to be me. I'm supposed to be the one that's in stride. I'm the one that's had a 10 out of 10 when I've rated myself previously. So, you know, why am I now stuck? And, you know, and then, you know, by extension, what impacts is having on my family? You know, if I'm doing it tough, what's it doing for them? So, yeah.
And because of your very strong critical drive, you then sort of just drove it into the ground, you know, is that what you're sort of saying? That just escalates almost out of control?
Correct. Yeah. Like just a million thoughts going through my head around, why am I doing this? Like, why am I, you know, I should be better than this. Yeah.
Yeah. So perspective, for a verifier, perspective is everything, you know. You just need something to, almost like an anchor you can hold on to that keeps you having perspective. That's where I honestly think that this, you know, my next interview coming up is going to be not just a game changer, it'll be a life changer. Even when I was on the phone talking to him and I just asked a couple of questions and the answers were like, I'll never forget the answers. I mean, they were just profound, and because they give you perspective to hold on to and anchor into for all sorts of challenges. But one that I have for me always is that everything that's happening is meant to happen, and it's for our personal growth. Just because it doesn't feel like it doesn't mean it shouldn't be happening. We just need to stay curious. And I think curiosity, we talked before about the power of gratitude, but I would say an almost equally equivalent mental wellness strategy is curiosity. You say, like, that's interesting. I wasn't expecting that. So I'm meant to learn from this, am I? That's freaking interesting, you know, but it keeps you curious, and it's a really positive place to be in. So good on you. And I can tell it's a, you know, really personal and vulnerable thing for you. Thanks for sharing, Grant. You're a great member of this group. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I think one of the things that has come up is, are there different illnesses associated with some drives more than others? You know, like, is it almost predictable what happens when, like what type of illness someone might encounter because of their ID? And are certain IDs more vulnerable to it than others? You know, that those types of correlations. So I will, you know, obviously I had a lot of experience with all sorts of different IDs. I will tell you that whilst there's nothing that's categorically like 100% right, I can't say that everyone with this ID, well, I certainly can't say anyone with any ID is going to get a certain type of illness, but I do see trends, but it's not 100%. So for example, the improvised instinct is the really emotional drive. And I see a lot of people use the word depression who have the improvised instinct. And I think it's very misused in lots of cases, because an improviser gets animated and passionate and excited. Then when they're up, they're really up. And when they're down, they will use the word depressed. I'm just feeling really depressed, because they're either as high as a kite or they're down deep, and that's like depressed. It's not that they're necessarily suffering depression, but in this day and age, when they use the word, I'm feeling really depressed, there's all sorts of, you know, alarm bells that go off for people around them. And others can even then say, well, they've got depression. And I don't see that they're necessarily suffering from depression. They can be feeling really depressed, and a fun conversation, a positive conversation, bringing some hope back, giving something new and challenging and exciting to think about or do, immediately, and it is immediate, can shift them back up to a really positive place. And I'm not saying that's true of all improvisers, that they don't have depression and everyone will move quickly, but I do see a real correlation between the language of depression and how an improviser plays. I've seen improvisers be as high as a kite 1 minute and completely sucked of energy the next. And I've particularly seen the reverse of that. Someone who's been a mess emotionally, and then a phone call comes in or something changes, and the change in their physiology is almost miraculous. I mean, it's crazy. You'd think they were lying. If you didn't know their ID, you'd think they were just being false about how upset they were. So I see that a lot from an improvised point of view. And the other one that I see is completers tend to get sick. I think there's a lot of, it's the planning drive, but there's a lot of worrying. The flip side of planning is worrying. And so it's not uncommon for me to see improvisers with sickness and particularly headaches. You know, I guess that's the mental aspect of that. But I always remember one of the swimmers I was coaching years ago, 1996, when I was working with the some of the elite swimmers. And one of them, she was a completer, and she said, well, I always get sick in August. And I'm like, of course you do, because you always have, whatever always is you. And if you're planning to get sick in August, nothing surer than you're going to get sick in August. And, you know, it was just interesting when we have those sorts of expectations, like, well, you know, the flu's going around, so of course I'm going to get it. Or if I get a flu shot, I'll always get it. That type of planning is really powerful in a completer's mind. So, you know, just even helping break that rhythm can be part and parcel of helping them stay in a better place. But I do see that connection. And I see people who are what I call a stress-free type of ID, not, you know, meaning like a down, up type of ID where everything tends to just float in and float out again. They don't tend to dwell on things. They live a generally pretty, you know, stress-free and illness-free type of life. By and large, there are definitely exceptions to everything I'm saying, but for trends and for the sake of provoking this conversation, I just thought I'd share that type of, you know, that's been my experience.
Can I just comment on that, Paul? Because when you were talking about the improvised being depressed, because of my high authenticate and my need to speak my reality, I don't say that. I just say I'm feeling flat or I'm feeling down today or whatever. So just like you were saying in the last few minutes, we just sort of find a way of getting back. And for me, it's really important, as you know, the use authenticates, the language we use, and is really important. So I'm very careful about how I speak my truth. So I would never say that, because I would feel that I would end up depressed or whatever, and there's no way I would ever want that. So it's like, today I'm feeling flat. What do I need to do to get out of it? I need to do this, that, whatever, go do it and move on. So,
yeah. I think it'd be really valuable in these classes, not the public webinars, but these master classes in future, to really unpack some of this, given how prevalent it is out there in the world, to unpack it and sort of look at for the different drives. If you do, because there will be verifiers, there will be authenticators, completers, all suffering from different forms. You know, they're not just the domain of one particular drive, and sort of looking at what are the things that most likely cause it, and more importantly, what can you start to do to then deal with those things and get back in stride and stay there. I think it'd be really powerful for all of us, but also for the people that we interact with. Guys, I'm aware of the time. We've just gone a little over, so I apologize for that. But thank you so much for being on the call, and we'll start to shape up this type of discussion then on the mental health side. That doesn't mean we'll do that exclusively. So if some of you have questions that you want to deal with as well, we'll cover them, but we'll make sure we give the, you know, building out like the matrices for the mental health side a really good run over the coming weeks. Thanks for being on the call. Have a great rest of the day. We'll hopefully see you next week. Take care, guys.
Thanks, Paul. See ya. Cheers. Good session.